CNN terrorism analyst Paul Cruickshank joins me now from London. And Paul, no claim of responsibility. If it's not Islamic militants, if it's not Al-Qaeda inspired, who is it?
Well, the working assumption right now is that it probably is something Al-Qaeda inspired, some jihadist terrorism against Norway today. But as you say, it's very, very early stages in this investigation. This individual who has just been arrested may be able to provide some answers to Norwegian police. But an attack of this scale, a coordinated attack which has devastated the Norwegian capital like it has today, terrorism experts would say that would have the hallmarks of Al-Qaeda, of a bomb maker who perhaps is trained overseas somewhere, perhaps somewhere like Pakistan or perhaps somewhere in the Middle East and has come back to Scandinavia to launch this attack. That people who are just sort of downloading bomb-making tips on the internet could probably not come up with this level of devastation. So the working assumption right now is this may be linked to Al-Qaeda. This is a terrorist organization that has in the past threatened Norway. Ayman al-Zawahiri, the new Al-Qaeda #1, singled out Norway in 2003 for attacks. Norway is in Afghanistan, it's part of NATO, and also a Norwegian newspaper last year reprinted a controversial depiction of the Prophet Muhammad. So several reasons why Al-Qaeda or a group linked to Al-Qaeda, an affiliate, may want to attack Norway, John.
Okay, assuming that this will end up being some kind of Islamic jihadist group which is responsible for this attack, is Norway looking at essentially their 9/11 moment here?
Well, it's a scene of absolute devastation and horror that some of these young kids were 15 and 16, we understand, who were being targeted. So for Norway, a very small country in Scandinavia, this is perhaps for them their 9/11 moment. There seems to be a lot of loss of life there today. Unclear at the moment whether this is Al-Qaeda, an affiliated group, homegrown extremists, but an attack of this level, of this sophistication, this coordination would suggest terrorists who have received some sort of training, perhaps in bomb making and also in launching these sorts of attacks, John.
And one theory which is being put forward as to why Oslo was targeted is because the United States and the United Kingdom, which have been through their own terrorist attacks, are now just too difficult for these kinds of terrorist attacks. And so now they're looking for soft targets. And Oslo was indeed a very, very soft target, an open liberal society.
Well, that is possible to some extent, but I think, you know, attacking the main government building in Oslo, I think that's not really a soft target. There would have been security outside of there. What level, I don't know. But it's hardly a soft target to launch this sort of a bombing attack on a government building like this. Obviously, this youth camp is a much softer sort of target. Now, counterterrorism officials believe that countries like the United States, like Great Britain, remain vulnerable to terrorist attacks. That there are a number of soft targets elsewhere in the West that groups like Al-Qaeda could target. Obviously, today, whoever's responsible for this has targeted Norway, John.
And from this point on, we talked about Norway being a fairly open society, but from this point on, how does life change for the 5 million people who live in Norway?
Well, for a lot of the Norwegian population, this will have come as a really great surprise. But for Norwegian security services, they've been dealing with an Islamist terrorist threat for several years. There's been concern about rising radicalization in Norway, rising violent extremism. There have been a number of individuals who've gone off to get trained in Pakistan with Al-Qaeda over there, with Shabab, the Somali group in Somalia. So this is not a new problem for the security services there. They sort of stepped up security over recent years. And Norway hasn't been living in a bubble. It's seen the events of the last 10 years. It saw what happened on 9/11 in the United States and July 7, 2005 in London. But it is going to be quite a shock, and there will obviously be reassessments about security, reassessments about people's daily rhythm of normal life. That, of course, will now happen right now, John.
And finally, Paul, big picture here. We're coming up to the 10th anniversary of 9/11, essentially the moment which many of us go back to as the start of all of this. Is the world essentially still facing the same threats despite all of the billions of dollars which have been spent on counterterrorism?
I think that that's right, and there's some evidence for this. In 2010, last year, there were 4 serious plots against the West with links to established jihadist groups, Al-Qaeda and its affiliates. In Pakistan, Al-Qaeda Central still has a safe haven in the tribal areas of Pakistan, in North Waziristan in particular, and the drone strikes haven't wiped this threat away. They may have reduced it. They have a new leader now, Ayman al-Zawahiri, who is determined to carry on launching strikes against the West and against Western interests all around the world. So this threat has not gone away. Killing bin Laden from a United States counterterrorism point of view was a big, big breakthrough, but it's not by any stretch of the imagination the end of the story.
Yeah, it just seems to continue. Paul Cruickshank in London, thank you.